Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Just got back from Clarks Hill Lake, the MLF Invitational. Had a great week. Finished 24th. I was actually tied for 23rd, but he had the tiebreaker. So I finished 24th. Overall, it's, like I say, good week. Never been to Clarks Hill, really. I spent like a half a day there a couple years ago, just kind of fishing just a little bit on my way to Lake Murray. But never really been there. So kind of how I broke down the lake this week. I chose to fish primarily the mid to upper section of the lake off the main river part that heads up to Russell Dam. Historically, I figured it was going to be a pre-spawn tournament. So historically in pre-spawn tournaments, in practice, I fished a lot of moving baits, jerk bait, crankbait type stuff, and it seems like a lot of times I catch them in practice, and then come tournament time, kind of struggle a little bit. So I kind of took a different approach this time, and I really tried to find fish fishing slow, so that if I could have confidence that if it got bright and sunny, which it did a couple days, that I could still get bit versus throwing a jerk bait or crankbait and them not being real active. So I put a lot of research into this tournament on Google Earth. Looking for points that had rock and either all rock or a mix of clay and rock, which kind of seemed to be the better points. So I probably put 500 waypoints in my graph before I got there. So on the first practice day, I just kind of took off from where we were staying and just started running all those waypoints I put in. And believe it or not, I probably got bit off 80% of them. But the unfortunate thing is I think I only had like two or three largemouth on the first practice day. And, they weren't big ones, they were 2.5 pounders, but I caught a lot of spotted bass. And so after the first practice day was over, I probably caught 50 or 60 fish that first day, but I only had like probably 11 pounds would have been my guesstimate on day one of practice. So I was kind of talking to a couple of my roommates, and I told them, I was like, there's really no sense in me running more of those rocky points, because I fished enough of them on day one not to catch a big one. So on day two, I thought, well, I'm gonna go to some dirty water and kind of poke around in that for a little while and see if I can figure out anything in the dirty water. So on day two, I went up in Little River on the South Carolina side. And I found a couple places where there's a few wads of fish, with the Carolina rig. Even though the water was dirty, still, caught quite a few and had quite a few bites. And then, I did catch more largemouth that day. I would have had a limit of largemouth that would have weighed probably 12 or 13 pounds, which I figure would probably be about an average bag, and that was probably pretty close. Then on day three, I kind of, fished a little more in the dirty water, and then I kind of worked my way down the lake some. I just wanted to see if I could see any spawning or, in the little clearer water. And, overall, I probably had the best day of the three down there. But, like I had one shoal I pulled up. I made two casts with a jerk bait, and I caught like a 3-pound spot and like a 2.5-pound spot. Which I never caught one there in the tournament. So, that's kind of the way it rolls on the blueback lakes. And then I had another point I pulled up on, and, I threw my Carolina rig out and had a bite, and, I kind of just reeled the fish back to the boat, and it was like a 4-pound largemouth. I throw out on the point again, get another bite, and kind of reel it to the boat, and that fish actually hooked itself, but it was like probably a little over 3-pound largemouth. So I figured that's probably where I was going to start on day one of the tournament. So I start there, and I think I caught 4 right off the bat. 3 little spots, and I caught one probably 14-inch largemouth there on a swim bait. And from there, I went to another place where I caught a good spot in practice, and caught my 5th one there. Went to my jerkbait hole, nothing. I went to another place, I caught a couple on a jerkbait, and I think I caught 1 or 2 there, but they didn't help me much. And then I ended up going, it was about noon, I ran up in the Little River, and I was throwing my Carolina rig, and it was just a little bar that kind of looked like a shark's tooth, and the bait was just loaded on the back side of it, and those fish were in about 3 to 4 foot of water. And I was casting, across the point and kind of bringing it up, and it kind of seemed like how they wanted it, and it's how I got bit the best. And so, anyways, I get there, and I probably catch like 8 or 10, but they're all like, 13 to 14 inches. I caught like a 3 and a 2.5 air in practice, and I kept on fishing it, just hoping I was going to get a good bite, and I didn't. And I just happened there was a pocket that was right in front of me, and I just happened to look up, and out in the middle of the pocket I saw some shad flicking. So I thought, you know what, I probably should go fish this pocket. So I pick up my chatterbait, and I go in the pocket and get up by the first dock, and there's a little bit of brush in the water and probably 1.5 foot water. Throw my chatterbait over there, boom, catch like a 2 1/4. Go around the dock, a little more brush in the water, pitch over there, boom, catch another like 2-pounder. And then I go to the other side of the pocket, and there's this little drain that came down and had like a log by it, and threw over there, and I got a bite, but he got off. So I thought, I'll run in the next pocket. So I ran in the next pocket, and the lake was down about probably 1.5 foot from full pool, so there wasn't a lot of cover in the water. But it seemed like if there was a little bit of cover in the water, you could catch fish around it. And I caught another one, and I told myself right then and there, it was like 12:30 on day 1. I was like, my gut tells me I should run with this pattern. But, in the back of my mind, I still had a number of spots in another creek that I caught a couple decent fish in practice that I really wanted to go fish. So I kind of bailed on the running pockets, and I went to the other creek and fished around. I caught a few fish, nothing really helped. Now I did run in a few pockets in that creek. Like I say, caught a few fish, but nothing ever helped. So I kind of reinforced my decision, going into day 2, that I was pretty much done Carolina rigging. I just felt, the fish were transitioning to the bank, and and I really needed to be up on the bank. I had fished, 4 days now on Clark's Hill in the springtime and not caught one over 3 pounds. So, I was doing something wrong. So on day 2, I did start off on where I started day 1, because, like I said, I caught 4 there the first day. I go there, and I'm not even certain I had a bite there. But then I had a couple other points in that creek where I was at that, just kind of like a 1 or 2 cast, deal. So I pulled up on the next point, and I catch like a 2.5 pound spot. I go to the next spot, and I catch like 2 1/4 pound spot. And then at that point, I was like, I'm heading up to the dirty water, and gonna fish that the rest of the day. So I run up there, and I get in the back end of this creek, and fortunately there was no one in the back of this creek. And what it was, out on the flat, so there was a few fish kind of in the back, but a lot of the fish were out on the flat, maybe 100 yards or so from the bushes. And there's probably 10 or 12 little sticks, little hang-ups, a little brush out on that flat, and about 2 foot of water that those fish were hanging on. And so, I get back there, it's like the second little stick I threw at, I catch like a 6 1/4. So, that's kind of a good kicker. And then, I fished a little bit more back there, I had it like a 3-pounder roll on a spinnerbait, never got it. And then I catch like another keeper that culled. And also looking at Google Earth, I like farther up this creek, there was a little backwater that looked right. I hadn't been in it in practice, but it's kind of one of those places where you think they would, they're definitely going to spawn in. So I made the decision I was going to run up there. So I run up there, and it's kind of a little tricky getting up there. There's kind of a flat I had to idle cross a little bit that was 1.5 feet deep. But I finally got back in the channel and ran up to the little backwater, and I get up there and there's a boat in there. And he did have a camera with him, and so about as soon as I got in there, I catch one. That helped a little bit, and I go a little bit further, and I catch another one. And anyways, him and I start to talk, and he said he had about 15 pounds that day. I was like, well, I've got probably 16 and a half, close to that. So anyway, the place wasn't very big, and he was kind of fishing his way out, and I went like right in behind him, and I had like 3-4 pounders roll on my spinnerbait off some isolated bushes. They just never got it. And I fished around there a little bit more. I made another pass. There was one bush that I'd thrown at like 10 times. My first time around, no bites. I come back around, and I throw my spinnerbait over there, and I catch like a 3-pounder. Where I probably screwed up there was not staying in there longer. Anyway, there was a couple other places similar up another creek that I wanted to go look at. I thought, well, maybe if I was the first one in there that, could get right in a hurry. And so I run all the way up in the other end, and the first little backwater I went in, it was just too shallow. And then I went up to the backwater a little bit further, and it was just really, really dirty in there. And it had this, I don't know, some kind of budding flower. I don't know if it's yellow flowers or something that are getting ready to come up or whatever. But there was a lot of gar in there, and it just didn't feel right to me. And instead of running back to that other backwater, I ended up running back down the lake, and I'm not certain why. Because that was kind of a stupid. Looking back, that's kind of stupid. But I was pretty certain I had made the cut. So, it's like I didn't want to go back to where I caught the 6.5, really, because, if I catch another 3-pounder there, it's only going to give me about half a pound cull, and I thought, on day 3, if I get in there, I catch 3-pounders worth the full 3 pounds. So pretty much I wasted the last probably 4 hours of my second tournament day. I went down by the, back towards takeoff, throwing swim bait, because I knew there was a few fish on beds. I thought, if I run across a big one, I catch it. It just never worked out. Looking at the standings after day 2, I think it was in 37th. And I was pretty certain, because I didn't know the kid that I saw up there with the camera boat. But I was pretty certain he was in the top 10. I thought he was like 7th or 8th going into day 3. And I didn't know if he started in there on day 2. So on day 3, obviously he was going to go out in front of me. But, when you're in the top 10, you possibly have a chance to win. I wasn't going to start in there on top of him. But with the off chance that he didn't start in there and was catching his fish somewhere else, I thought, well, I'm going to start where I caught the 6.5 or 6.25 on day 2, and then I'll fish a few hours in there, and then I'll run up there. So I start in on day 3. I run straight to the largemouth area, and I catch a limit worth 13 pounds probably in the first hour. Pretty quick, and then I decided, well, I'm going to run up to the other area. So I run up there, and as soon as I get in the pocket, I catch one on chatterbait. Go a little bit further, I throw my chatterbait up by this log, and another big one rolls on it. Just never got it. Made about 10 or 15 more casts in there, but he kind of swam off, I guess. And then as I got farther in the pocket, when I was in talking distance with the kid, I was like, I asked him how he was doing today, and he told me that, well, as soon as he got there in the morning, he hadn't gone about 100 yards and had 23 pounds. So at that point, I told him, I was just like, I'm gonna make a quick pass through, since it's quite a ways up there, and then I was gonna let him have it. He had the chance to win, I didn't. I told him, I was like, I sure would like to stay and fish, but I just didn't feel it was right to do that. I would hope, if I was in that position, somebody would give me the same courtesy. So I left out of there, and I just kind of went practicing for a while, kind of looking for something similar to that maybe nobody else had found. And I didn't really find that. So I practiced for a little bit, and then I ended up going back to where I started. And, I probably caught another 10 fish in there, but nothing, that, I could call with. And, by that time, my day was pretty much shot. And, on day 3, I ended up with almost 15, like 14, 13, something like that. And I really kind of figured that would keep me right at around 37th, but it actually jumped me up to 24. So that was kind of a, blessing. But this week for me, I really caught them on 3 baits in the tournament. The first day, I pretty much caught everything on a Carolina rig. Got a Denali N3 7.4 medium heavy rod. It's a great Carolina rig rod. Being 7.4, you can pick up a lot of line with it. Paired with a lose reel. I was throwing 16 pound with the half-ounce weight on that. That was pretty much all my weight on day 1. On day 2, my big one I caught is a white chatterbait, just a homemade deal that I make, and that's what I caught my big one on. And then after that, when the rest of the fish I caught on day 2 was just a I believe it's probably 3/8 ounce spinnerbait. Got a gold hammer blade on it. Made by my buddy Nick Teeters in Bloomington, Indiana. And that caught quite a few fish for me on day 2. That rod was a Denali Lithium Pro spinnerbait rod. It's 610 medium heavy. I like the 610 rod for spinnerbaits, and when I'm throwing my chatterbait around docks or bushes trying to skip, I don't like the longer rod. So my chatterbait rod, this is an old Denali Rosewood series. It's a 610 heavy rod. It's an old frog rod that I use, but I really like using that on my chatterbait. Like I say, around docks, or we're trying to make precise casts. If I'm out open, fishing open water with the chatterbait, I've got it like on a 7.2 Lithium Pro frog rod from Denali. But just that short rod, you can just make a little more precise casts with it. So ended up 24th in the tournament. The standings, I moved up to 16th after 2 tournaments. The top 8 will qualify for the BPT. There's no championship this year, so pretty much all we're fishing for is a qualification for the BPT. Our next tournament is at Eufaula in Oklahoma. Never been there, but I think it'll fish, it's going to be a power fishing probably deal. It could be some sight fishing going on. The lake historically is a pretty dirty lake. I think it's about full pull now, so there'll be bushes, and so it'll be kind of the same MO, chatterbait, spinnerbait, maybe some top water. going on, maybe some shallow cranking. So kind of right up my alley for what I like to do. But other than that, got a great start to the year. Hope to keep it rolling in the next tournament. And if you've got any questions or comments, drop them below. And thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.